Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 245. Man, let me tell ya, I am excited about chapter 245. And the reason I'm excited is just because I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm just trying to think about what could we possibly do moving forward. And let me tell you guys, as we go into the video, I want you to know anything that I come up with, I want you to know I'm coming up with it under extreme bias. I am extremely biased because I have an idea about how the story should go in terms of the poetic nature of it. But some things in the chapter have been introduced that throw that poetic nature off. So that bias is still very much there. I'm fixated on what I think it should do, and that's going to cloud my judgment. So I'm very interested in hearing what you guys have to say as we go into the chapter, and I point little things out and maybe miss some things. I would love to know what you guys are thinking about where we're going with Hero Academia. But let's just talk about the generals first before we go into talking about the specifics. I think that the author, like for me, the way I'm interpreting this chapter, it feels like the author is hiding a tree in a forest. I feel like there are so many factors going on right now that it makes it really hard for me to imagine a way forward. But the thing is, because this is a story, there is a way forward. There is a solid story path that the author is going to take. It's just an issue of figuring out what that story path is going to be. It might also be that we just don't know if the author introduces something random, right? But the reason I'm saying that is because there's things in the chapter that ultimately lead me to believe that I think if I was to make a prediction about how Hero Academia will go, I feel that this arc may be an infiltration arc. Because one thing that I did come away from this chapter feeling is that we need to neutralize the Liberation Army to some degree. The Liberation Army is just too much manpower. But I'm thinking about the perspective of trying to handle a story with so many players. Like that's kind of scary. Like if the guy wants to go One Piece style and make like a giant war for the end of the series, like that will be valuable in its own right, and that will also be an interesting challenge to see how Hero Academia handles that. Given the general trends with shonen, we know that the shonens love to have these large battles, or at least the popular shonens. Like we have One Piece, Naruto, Bleach. These guys love to play up the rhetoric of war. So the idea that ultimately My Hero Academia needs the Liberation Army so that they can set up a giant war-like scenario, very possible. But I feel like Hero Academia itself works as a more intimate story. That is one villain, one hero going at it, because that is the conflict that All Might and All for One embodied. So I am kind of biased towards imagining that this will all eventually settle in a one-on-one fight. And I mean, mind you, like the other wars also kind of settle in a one-on-one fight, but I mean, Hero Academia seems more focused on having this very intimate type of dynamic between the hero and the villain that I think would ultimately focus everything down. Like, effectively, the Hero Academia's narrative would just shoo away the excess players. And we've already seen this kind of thing happen before with shooing away excess players. Like it happened with the Liberation Army versus the villains. They shoot away the extra players. Like those extra players ultimately did nothing, right? Or not, I don't want to say they did nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, they weren't that worthwhile. I mean, at the end of the day, Spinner and Mr. Compress were able to fight them off without much help from Twice. Then when Twice came in, obviously, like it turned into a bigger battlefield, but it doesn't change the fact that at the beginning, those two were still going strong. Any Hoosers, what I'm thinking is infiltration type arc. That's probably what we're going to go in. Maybe there's going to be some character deaths in there, but infiltration type arc, maybe the heroes will be able to deal a blow to the Liberation Army to some degree, like really like give them a hit, and then the villains will have the opportunity to slap back. That's what I'm thinking. And we'll go through the chapter. I'll point out the pages to you that make me feel like we could pull off an infiltration type arc with the kids in tow. It might also just be like by next week, we might also just go into a completely different plot. But, that's kind of the fun of speculation. Anyway, how many minutes are we in already? Oh, good. 4 minutes. That's great. All right, let's start up the page-by-page walkthrough of what I thought was pretty interesting. So the first page is just the beginning of trying to figure out what Hawks was doing. And I do want to give massive props to the author. I I didn't think to use Hawks' facial expression as the clue. And it's really funny because in the previous video, we were talking about how Hawks' facial expression was doing a lot for the chapter. And it's like, oh my god, I do feel really stupid. So props to anyone that said, you know, this is how Endeavor's going to figure it out by Hawks' facial expressions. Like, I think that was a really good move on the author. The author is really good at being subtle. I feel really stupid, especially when I made a big deal about the facial expressions in the last chapter. And it's just, oh, man, good one, author, good one. So that's the first page. Endeavor talking about the face that Hawks was making. I think that was a brilliant page. Anyway, second page is, I think, a pretty funny page as Hawks is telling Endeavor what to do. I love that the guy had more books, and this really sold it for me. Because if he's trying to give off the idea that, oh yeah, I'm spreading the good word of the Liberation Army, bros. Of course he should have more books. Of course he should be trying to indoctrinate the heroes. I really love that. And I also love that Izuku's fanboyism is just making him want to learn about the Liberation Army. Now that is a little bit dangerous. Like, if it wasn't Izuku, that's like the kind of rhetoric that it's like, that's the power of propaganda right there, right? And you can easily imagine a guy who looks up to these heroes just listening to what they say and picking up a really toxic book. That was like, it's a funny moment, but it's scary because it shows what kind of influence people in relative authority have. Okay, page 4 on the manga stream iteration of this. We continue just making this seem like a normal situation with Hawks being totally up on the rhetoric. We did have some interesting comments that I think may be it continues off from what I just said for the last page, but some of the comments are interesting. So like the first ones that I want to look at are Todoroki just acknowledging, you know, just kind of leaning in on it, that he was carrying a lot of the book, he must really love it. And then Izuku going in with he must be doing missionary work. It's really, really disturbing to hear Izuku calling it missionary work when he's working for the Liberation Army, given that we as readers know what the liberation rhetoric leads some people to do, some oppressed people, according to Hero Academia standards. So that was really interesting. The one thing that you have to take away when Izuku is saying that missionary work, it's like it really cements that Izuku may not be the most well versed on the history of the Liberation Army. Because if he's talking about this as if it's missionary work, it does feel like there is a knowledge gap with Izuku. And this is just scary how propaganda works. Because Hawks is playing along with it, but he knows that this is a lie. But then that also brings me to like his next panel, where he talks about, let me see, the liberation ideology will be the groundwork on society from here on out. And that when he says that, that's not necessarily a lie. That may very well become true depending on how things shake out. If the Liberation Army gains a significant foothold, it's like, yes, this will be the propaganda that's going to be just shot all over the place, which will be extremely hard to fight against. Propaganda, once it gets into the, I guess, common consciousness, tough. It's tough to get past that. Anyway, the end of the page gives us the final clue, depending on the translation. I think I'd like Gemini's Box's translation for this, because there's a lot of emphasis on Hawks being number 2 throughout the chapter, but Hawks ultimately tells Endeavor, yeah, look for number 2 or look for the second one. Now, next we go into a page that I think is one that can influence, you know, the course of the future, where Hawks is leaving and he tells them to take their internship seriously, all 4 of them. So that's Endeavor and the other 3, and then he tells Endeavor to he thinks for Endeavor to train his interns well. So already, if I'm saying that we're going to go into an infiltration type arc, this page, I would argue, goes against that, because this page makes it seem like they could be setting up for Endeavor to just train up the kids hardcore so that they're ready for whenever the Liberation Army steps up. The only thing that I would think argues against that is that Endeavor is the number 1. If he's not getting involved in this to some degree, it doesn't really befit number 1 to not get involved. Now, on the next page, page 6 on Manga Stream, it might be the most throwaway page of the chapter. And when I say the most throwaway page, I mean relative to the rest of the chapter, this might be the one that we could do without, because the only thing it really tells us is how people feel about Hawks. It tells us that Bakugo isn't the most, he's not the biggest fan, and it tells us that Izuku and Todoroki appreciate him. And of course, Endeavor is ruminating on what the guy said. So that page doesn't really add much for me. But again, it is an important page when it comes to telling us about the characters or how they feel about Hawks, because that might be a payoff later. The big thing to take away from that, again, is that I don't want you guys to feel that I'm saying that's the worst page in existence. I'm quite literally saying, compared to the rest of the chapter, like the rest of the chapter, the pages are so valuable that this one is just the least valuable of so many valuable pages. Anyway, we go into page 7 on Manga Stream, and here we have a page that leads me more towards we could have an infiltration type thing. You know, and when I say infiltration, just to make sure, just to reiterate, I mean an information gathering mission with maybe the potential of knocking down some of the legs that the Liberation Army is standing on. Anywho, the big thing that I take away here, aside from the character designs, like the character designs, you know, like whatever. I'm here for the information. I'm sure the characters are cool, but I'm here for the information. We find out about Burning, and we find out that Endeavor has over 30 sidekicks. Now, when I hear over 30 sidekicks, I'm thinking that's resources. Endeavor has resources. And if Endeavor wants to do this, and if he wants to march into an enemy stronghold to try and find out stuff, like, he's got the manpower. I think when you hear 30 sidekicks, you should think that we are at a level that we are comparable to the Shizaki raid. Because, again, over 30 of them. Like, that's a small militia. Endeavor has a lot of power there. So, you know, when it comes to the idea of the infiltration thing, or even anything that involves going up against the Liberation Army in an early stage, it's a question of whether or not Endeavor would bring about or bring around Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo. Because that's the big thing here. Like, these three are in the arc, so they have to be used in the arc to some degree. The question is, in what way are they going to be used? Is it just going to be a training arc, or are they going to get involved in hero work? You know, common sense would tell me that Endeavor wouldn't want to endanger these three kids, but the Hero Academia world's common sense is, oh yeah, let's involve them in a super dangerous raid with Yakuza, because they're heroes in training, might as well throw them into the fire. So given that the Hero Academia world is a throw it into the fire type world, yeah, this page just sets up to me that we do have the resources to mount some kind of operation against the Liberation Army instead of just staying safe and doing, you know, just grunt work. Now, on page 8, we continue the characterization for this main group of, well, I guess, sidekicks that we have. And one thing I do want to say now about the art and Burning, she looks a lot like a Trigger character. Like, I feel like she's a character that I would see on, a Trigger movie or Kill la Kill. Like, her face looks very much like a Trigger character. Anyway, not the point. This page just tells us or it might give us an idea of what exactly the kids may be doing, because they're saying, like, hey, we got all this under control, and Bakugo's like, okay, we gotta go steal other people's work. Got it. You know, be go-getters. So this page, I feel, could also offer an alternative direction, depending on where exactly the author wants to focus. Again, author gave us a lot of information, and there's a lot of pathways open in front of us. Anyway, beyond that, the page is just, I guess, world building. It's telling us what exactly the number 1 agency does, and they tell us just different things like emergencies, patrol, bodyguard work. Really interesting stuff. It seems like they're always busy. I would expect that kind of level of efficiency. Mind you, I say they're always busy, but there's so many sidekicks in one building right now. So, like, how busy are they actually? But, you know, it's probably just regular shift work. I am interested to see how that goes, because we go into page 9. And page 9 is now the start of transitioning into Endeavor trying to figure out what Hawks was saying. And so that was very interesting. It was very interesting to go through page 10 and see what exactly Endeavor was thinking. And what I really liked about this whole little bit of Endeavor's internal monologue is that it shows that Endeavor remembers Hawks really well. Like, he's only talked to him once. But look at to what degree the guy understands him. Look how he understands that the guy's contradicting himself. Look how he's, like, just imagining Hawks's smile, right? So that felt really good. It feels like, oh yeah, Endeavor might actually have a friend. Wow. So when we go into page 11 and Endeavor figures out the coded message that Hawks was trying to tell him about the second one, or number 2, it feels really good. It feels good to see that Endeavor knows this guy well enough to know what his true feelings are. And it's cool to see that Endeavor was able to figure it out, because it's like, wow, Good on you, Endeavor. Now, page 12 is where we get that really satisfying feeling of Endeavor figuring out the coded message, and we're getting to see some of the message. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure that the translation groups had a bit of a struggle here because they're probably translating whatever alphabet they were using for this one, and they had to translate it into something that made sense in English. I would assume, from the way I saw it so far between the manga stream and Jemani's box translation, I think Jemani's box had a better translation for that little bit. But honestly, the bit where, you know, Endeavor seeing the words on the page doesn't really matter. What matters is that we get the final message. Anyway, that was really exciting, and then we transition over to Hawks and him hoping that the guy figures out what he was doing. And on this page, we get like the full revelation of the message, that being the enemy liberation army, the League take over, numbers over 100,000. So, okay, I understood what Hawks was trying to convey to Endeavor. And at page 14 on Manga Stream Translation, Hawks reminds us that telecommunications and writing are both impossible. Now, here's the thing. Initially, I had assumed that Hawks had just written or scribbled things into the book instead of highlighting. So what I want to point out here is that this is really competent on Hawks' part, because if Hawks had actually just written messages into the book, I would have wondered if Skeptic had bugged Hawks enough to the point that he could track Hawks' like hand movements, because Hawks knows that he's bugged. So I'm actually really happy that the author took that a step ahead, made Hawks even more competent, and just said like, yeah, he assumed that even writing would be dangerous, so he just highlighted. And it's like, yo, that's pretty intense. Like, the author is like, I really feel when it comes to Hawks, the author is really going hard here with trying to make this as solid as possible. So at page 15, this is a wonderful little page. I think in for cutesiness, I think it might be my favorite page, only because of Toga reacting to Izuku. But no, it was a really informative page telling us how Hero Society is currently adapting, what they're doing. And one thing that I really liked here is that everyone, they were in like this little nice round table, and they had screens in front of them. And then when you look at Dabby's face, there's a picture of Hawks' assault. So what it looks like there, when you look at everyone's conversation and how they're all talking here, it looks like there's pictures of when Hawks attacked those guys that were trying to take down Endeavor, and it looks like those pictures are now on the screen, such that Toga can see them and be excited that Izuku's there. So I really like the page. I think there's a lot of nice little details here, and I really like seeing Toga, and surprisingly, I like seeing Skeptic smile. I like seeing him happy. I'm not sure why, but I enjoy seeing him like feel like they're all like the same team. I know that they're having the wool pull over their heads, but it's like, I still like that they're getting along, you know? It's kind of weird. But anyway, no, this was a really, really cute page. I guess the part that I was most interested in is Dobby saying that someone hasn't gotten much stronger. And that's relatively unclear, because the last person that gets mentioned before that line is Izuku, which would make you think they're talking about Izuku, which is very possible. But because it's Dobby, he might also be talking about Shoto. So it's tough to actually say. The other thing that's important to note is that if he is talking about Izuku, he doesn't know about Izuku's black whip, which that is an interesting implication if you think about it. Anyway, overall, that was a really nice page. Page 16 in Manga Stream, we go on. Sorry, just checking the time. And we have Hawks telling us how exactly he's bugging the villains, and through the villains, or sorry, not that page yet. On this page, we just find out that no, Hawks is just super trained to the point that his wings can, I guess, propagate sound towards him. Like, I get it, right? Like, the wings pick up the sound, they vibrate, they push that vibration through to him. I'm very interested in how he can hear things. I wonder if he has special hero gear that helps him pick up those small little, I guess, sounds. Or I wonder if he's actually vibrating his wings themselves. Like, the feathers are on his wings. I wonder if they're vibrating in a way that he understands, like he learned how to read the vibration. When you consider that he's saying that his wings can distinguish sounds from the minute change in vibrations in the air, it honestly makes it seem like he's not traditionally hearing this. It makes it seem like he's interpreting vibration from his wings, which is significantly different than hearing something. So that was really interesting. That seems like a high level move, man. Like, good on him for training it that hard. Anyway, once we start listening in, we find out that Tamura is getting his power, and this definitely got me thinking. The final page is the big wham episode. It tells us that the big attack's happening in 4 months from now, and it's superimposed with Toga saying that everything's going to be destroyed. And then we have Shigaraki in the final panel, and this is the one that really broke my mind, because 4 months from January puts us at February, March, April, May, right? But after doing a quick Google search, it seems that the school year ends in March. So if you're saying that there's going to be something happening at the end of the school year, this 4 months kind of throws it off a little bit, or it throws me off a lot. And you guys can understand it because you probably heard me talk about the school year being the one that's going to be a big event. And it's like, well, this is prognosticating something else. And that's why I'm having the big struggle here. But hey, you know what? All good stuff. Anyway, talking about this in particular. What I'm thinking, if I was to stay super biased on what I'm stuck on, I would think that we go and we deliver an attack to the Liberation Army, and then 2 months from now, in March, the Liberation Army strikes back at the students that went after them, because you mess with our stuff, we'll mess with you, kind of thing, and we take the 2 months. And we attack UA at those 2 months, and then the Tamora plan continues 2 months from there. I feel like that's a way that we could go about this. I feel like we could deal with things like that. Like, I think in Hero Academia we should get the opportunity to watch a graduation ceremony. So how interesting would it be if like Midio's graduation is where something goes wrong? That'd be a pretty loud event. But, that's speculation. Let's actually talk about the information that we got here, that being Shigaraki needing 4 months. So this is actually really good. If you remember when we started this arc, a big question that I had was like, are we going to take time to do something else, focus on another villain while Shigaraki gathers his forces? Because I think I recall in those videos suggesting that there's probably going to be some kind of waiting period before Shigaraki actually makes a move, because it would be too fast if he did make a move. So here we have it. We have the waiting period. We have a 4 months deadline. When I'm reading this, I really think Endeavor should be preemptive. You don't want this to actually work out. But now we have to ask, why exactly will Shigaraki have to be waiting 4 months? Because what was the words that Toga said? Oh yeah, once Tamora gets that power, we'll finally be ready to do it. So, at that point, it's like, what power are they referring to? I think the quickest one to talk about would probably be All for One. Like, once he receives the All for One power, okay, that makes sense. But you might be questioning, well, why is it 4 months from now? Well, there's a lot of possibilities. Maybe we're doing a prison break-in at some point later. Maybe there's something else in the background. The reality is, it might take 4 months because that's just how long it takes to create a Nomu. And when I say a Nomu, it's like, right now the Nomus are being created in the absence of All for One, yeah. Almost got confused there. They're being created in the absence of All for One, which tells me that they must have some kind of sample of a quirk that they are able to use to make the Nomus. So imagine if Shigaraki ends up, or if they had a sample of the All for One quirk. If they have the sample of the All for One quirk, they could probably apply whatever process they use to make the Nomus onto Shigaraki himself. And then that would account for why there would be a 4 month period. It would be 4 months, either because, we have to wait for Shigaraki to grow into it, but then it's weird that we get 4 months, or 4 months because that's when they're planning on roughly getting All for One out of jail, or 4 months because there's a scientific process going on behind it, and Shigaraki needs to be incubated. And in the case that he needs to be incubated, I could very much imagine a situation where, like, Shigaraki has to go into one of those test tubes, and then the heroes attack, and then the villains have to pull Shigaraki out of the along with the test tube and protect him. And then Shigaraki gets away, and then it's a big tragedy because it's like, oh no, we let the big mastermind get away from this. We're still in trouble. There's a lot of ways that we could potentially spin this. And all I got is just excitement in my heart. Like, I'm very in for this. So guys, I've given you a lot of thoughts. They're all over the place, but let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's anything I said that you thought, okay, maybe we can take that and work with it. I would love to know where you think we're going from here. It's also very likely that we still don't have the critical information for this arc's direction yet, and this is all just extra spicing. And if this is just all extra spice on the side, it's like, oh my god, author, like, just calm down. But yeah, really good chapter, really exciting. Guys, thanks for sticking with me. I got 30 minutes recorded. I'll try to chop it down a bit. But anyway, till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.